Hi everyone. Today is a sunny day in Manchester, and I'm going to talk about how I got a lecture position at the University of Manchester. So, apologies, I've not been as active as I should be on this channel, really mainly being due to time constraints, and I'm not really tech savvy, so I don't have the best video editing skills and whatnot. So, it's going to be a bit of a raw video, but we're going to go over to the board and I'm going to discuss from my personal perspective what I think are some of the common pitfalls people do when trying to become academics and how we can avoid them. Now, it's a really nice sunny day in Manchester. So I know this is not relevant to the video, but I just thought it's worthy of showing you. Just look at that. We don't get a lot of sunny days here in Manchester, so that probably could be the reason why I'm up for making a YouTube video. But anyways, bear with me with my cheap selfie stick. We're going to get right to the description. So let's dive into it. How did I become a lecturer at age 30? What are some of the common pitfalls we can avoid? And so on. What we want to do in a postdoc is we want to escape after a period of time. We don't want to be stuck in the postdoc purgatory forever. Because if you think of it, postdoc does kind of act like purgatory. It's the in between. You're no longer a PhD student. Everything was kind of clear when you were a PhD student. You were working towards that goal. At the same time, you're not academic staff yet. You're in this weird middle, hovering over from fixed term contract to fixed term contract. So the idea is we don't want to make this a lifestyle. We want to be there for a set amount of time and then move on to bigger and better things. Now, before I jump onto the illustrations, it's important that I notify this is my experiences of what worked for me to secure lectureship at age 30. But with that in mind, this isn't to say that if you follow all of these steps, you're guaranteed an academic job. Because I know somewhere there's going to be a doomer watching this and they're going to comment, yeah, but academic jobs are scarce. Look at the statistic. We all know that 100%. So all we're saying is that for those who are ambitious and still have that dream alive, these are things you can do to help increase your chances of becoming an academic, or at the very least, even if you don't get the academic job, you'll be in a much better position after the postdoc. All right? It's very important we get that out there. But let's hover over. So I've really broken it down from my experience and my experience of watching another to 6 key things. So the first thing I realize that a lot of people do as a mistake is they overcommit to the postdoc job. And I know this sounds kind of like it contradicts itself because the whole idea of a postdoc job is that it's a springboard to becoming an academic. So in essence, you should excel in your job and overcommit to it. And here I am telling you the exact opposite. Now, before I get into this, it's important that we know what is a postdoc job? How do we define it? Basically, all what a postdoc is an academic somewhere, they landed a big grant, and they now need to hire somebody with research experience to carry out their research for them. That's in essence what a postdoc is. So you want somebody with an experience, a PhD holder, someone who's done their PhD that can do you the data connection analysis and write things for you as an academic, and you just kind of oversee it and guide them. So with that in mind, what are the skill sets that we're going to get, or what are the benefits that we're going to get when doing a postdoc? And really what they are is publications. So we're going to do this one by one. So that's probably one of the main things, right? Because if you are the postdoc on those research projects and you're doing all the work and whatnot, you're probably going to be first author on the papers. So that's one of the benefits of being a postdoc. What other benefits do we get from the postdoc job? Experience. So we get more research experience, right? As a result of doing the postdoc for an X amount of years, you are getting more research experience, working with a bigger team or a different teams, and so on. Really, that's kind of the main 2 things you get out of it. I don't think there's anything else. Some argue, yep, skill sets, but I would say if somebody's hiring a postdoc, they kind of expect that you already have the skill set. So you're not really upskilling a lot, let's just say. So in essence, it's publications experience. That's what you get out of a postdoc job. But what is the criteria to become an academic? Obviously, there is publications and experience. I agree. But there's so many other things. So there's teaching. That's the obvious one, right? There's grant writing, probably the most important things. And a lot of people don't know this until they become academics. If you cannot write grants and bring in money, then you won't survive as an academic. There is leadership and management. You're going to be, whether it's a course, whether it's, a unit on a course, whether it's supervising students, whether it's whatever it may be, you're going to be expected to show some leadership and management skills. What else? Collaborations. They want to make sure that as an academic, you can make things happen. You can collaborate with other research groups, with other institutions, and so on. So you want to, let me just move myself, be able to do collaborative work. What else? Just thinking on the top of my head. As supervision, that's another one. So you're going to be supervising undergraduate students, master's students, PhDs, and so on. And then there's a whole list of other kind of things that go on. But these are kind of, let's say, the main ones. I'd say grant writing, teaching, supervision, collaborations, leadership, and management. So the academic job, what it entails is much more than just publications and research experience. Don't get me wrong, they're an important part of it, but they're not the only thing. So when you kind of see that the overlap, if we're going to make this into a Venn diagram, sorry, I'm really bad at this one. In a postdoc, you will get publications and experience, but you're not going to get all of the other things that are required to be an academic, if that makes sense. So the overlap is not really that big. Apart from publications and research experience, if you only do the postdoc, you're not going to get much supervision experience. You're not going to get any teaching, grant writing, leadership and management skills, collaborations, and so on. So why do I say it's a huge mistake to overcommit to the job? Because I see a lot of people do this. They've, for example, come out, fresh out of the PhD, and the PhD mentality was, I'm going to give it 100%. I'm going to work evenings, day and night, weekends on the PhD. And then they carry on that mentality to the postdoc. Oh, I got a postdoc job, so now I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to work on the postdoc weekends, evenings, and everything, and so on. Now, what that will do is just make you a good postdoc researcher. It's not going to plant the seeds to becoming a great academic. You still need all the other things. And when you come to apply for a position of becoming an academic, they're going to look at that. They're going to be like, okay, this person can publish. They got a bit more research experience, but they don't really tick all of these boxes and all the kind of other things that the institutions want. So that's why I always tell people, do your postdoc job. Obviously, do it to the best of your abilities, but don't be spending evenings and weekends and like don't be given 100% of your time. You need to kind of spread out your time to get the other things going. How do we do that? We'll get to that in a bit. But that's probably the first common mistake that people do. And it sounds very counterintuitive, but that's kind of how it goes. We go on to the second mistake. And I know this one sounds a bit weird, but they never make their ambitions known. So usually what happens is when you're a postdoc, your PI is usually your line manager, right? But you are in an institution, so you have access to other academics. There's a head of division, a head of school, a dean, and so on. Now, a lot of postdocs have this habit of suffering in silence, so they don't really make their ambitions known. So some of it is of fear. They're like, oh, if I tell my PI that I have ambitions of writing my own grant or applying for a fellowship or doing an internship abroad or becoming an academic, maybe they're going to think I'm lazy and I don't commit to the job. So they kind of keep it hidden, or they just assume that their line manager is going to kind of know their ambitions somehow and push them to the next level. For your line manager or everybody at the institution, unless you state your ambitions, they're just going to assume you're happy doing your postdoc. So I know this sounds very straightforward, but it's a very kind of linear thing. The more your ambitions are visible to the institution, the more likely you're going to get some internal support and opportunities. So, how does this work? Very easily. If your line manager is aware, for example, that you want to write grants, that you want to kind of establish your own research stream, your own research ideas, or that maybe you want to supervise, they will keep you in mind. And even if you have a toxic supervisor, at least talking to other academics, they will also keep that in mind. So when opportunities come their way, they will send it to you. They'll let you know. And that's kind of one thing that really worked well for me from personal experience, that as soon as I got my postdoc, I made it very clear to my line managers that, listen, I'm fascinated for this experience. It's going to be really good opportunities for me, and I'm going to give it my all. However, I don't want to be just a postdoc forever. I want to apply for my own research funding. I also want to dabble in supervision. If there are some teaching opportunities here and there, I want to be involved in that. And really, my ambitions is in the next couple of years, I want to move on to um, bigger and better things. I want to see kind of a clear trajectory. So I haven't made that known from the onset. My line managers were very accommodating, luckily for me. And they said, okay, we will, for example, help you out if you want to write your own grants and whatnot. Now, obviously, it's a give and take for them, because you frame it as if I will write my own grants and I'm happy to have you involved, you know what I mean, in that project, but I want to do my thing. I want to lead on things. So you need to kind of echo that. And I'll never forget also when I showed up to one of the presentations that I had to do to kind of the higher ups, I made them known, like, listen, I've been in this institution, I've been postdocing for 2.5 years, and you should notice my work, and I want to move on to bigger and better things. So the more you kind of tell people, especially your line manager, the more you make your ambitions visible, the more likely people are going to run things by you. But if you do not do that, and you just show up to your postdoc 24/7 and you don't really talk about it, the people will just assume you're happy in your position. So that's, I think, the second common mistake people do. And if you're afraid and you have a toxic line manager who's going to get upset, and if they know your ambitions, they're going to derail you, then my advice is get out of that job as soon as you can, because you're going to be stuck in postdoc purgatory for eternity. So we then move on to the third thing, over relying on your PI. And that's something I've been guilty of when I did my postdoc. So when you do your postdoc, the tendency is that everything is going to run through your PI, because at the end of the day, you're working on their research project. And to some extent, that's true that you do have to rely on them, but there's a difference between reliance and over reliance. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. As you see, I kind of drawn it out here. Here is your PI, this big, or that's how the institution views it. There's your PI, they're probably a senior and established academic. They're this big center of attention. And then there's nice, tiny little you. No, I'm kidding. There's you. That's how the institution sees you, a junior researcher, still kind of up and coming. So this is how you are in their lens, whether you like it or not. Now, usually what's going to happen, as I said, is if you over rely on all your outputs and everything you're going to do is going to be solidly tied to your PI. So this is what's going to happen. Let's say, for example, you're going to publish. All of your publications are probably going to be tied to your PI. Let's say you are going to write grants, for instance. Trying to find the text bug. There we go. Let's put that here. Let's say you're going to do grant writing. Let's just say graph for simplicity's sake. So all the research that you work on is usually grants that your PI got. They're not your grants. You're just working on the PI's grants, okay? On whatever it is you do, I'll just try to draw a third one. I don't know. Sorry, my drawing is hideous, but so you're going to be publishing papers, grants. Let's say conferences. You go to conferences that your PI sends you on. So, how the institution sees it is when you come to apply for an academic position, really, in essence, they're going to see your PI as this juggernaut who brings in grant money, who's got their own research stream, who's got their own collaborations. You are just kind of an extension of them. You know what I mean? You are just kind of this small entity that's interconnected to them. So why would they hire you if they already got somebody who's more experienced in publishing and writing grants in your area and who's already got those collaborations? Why will they hire somebody who's kind of piggybacking on that, if that makes sense? So what you want to do is, yes, you do want to publish and work on the grant that your PI is giving you. And I think this one, instead of conferences, we should have written collaboration. Sorry for that. You do want to have some of that, but at the same time, you want to kind of be your own entity. You want to have other things going on for you. So you want to grow in the eyes of the institution. You want to have these three things from other places. So you want to be having your own grants that you lead on. You want to be publishing papers with other people as well, not just your PI. So you want to kind of break that complete line of dependency, because only when you do that, you can then prove to the institution that you are a valuable asset. You have your own thing going. You're not completely reliant on the PI. And as I said, this is a critical mistake. I've done it a lot. And you'll even see it in my CV in my postdoc years. You'll see that there is a particular research group who everything I was doing was with them. That's not wrong, but you want to broaden your horizons to some extent. So then we move over to the fourth mistake. And this one sounds straightforward, but a lot of people don't know about it. It's simply not knowing the promotions criteria. So whatever institution you work with, you need to know what the promotion criteria is. So if you're working towards becoming a lecturer, you need to know what is the criteria to become a lecturer. I know this sounds very straightforward, but a lot of people don't know that. And I remember the best advice my mentor gave me was, as soon as I became a postdoc, and I told her that I want to become either a research fellow in a few years or a lecturer, she told me, go to the university website, look at the promotions criteria, and monitor yourself over time and see, are you ticking these boxes, rather than just blindly working and then a couple of years coming to apply and then being surprised that, oh my God, I don't meet half of the criteria, and so on. So this is really, really important. Don't overlook the step. The first thing you do when you get that postdoc position is be like, where do I want to be a few years from now? Do I want to be a senior research fellow? Do I want to be a lecturer or whatever? Do I even want to transition to industry? You look at that organization's promotion criteria, and over time, as you work as a postdoc, you see, okay, which boxes am I ticking and which boxes that I'm not ticking. That will also help you in your decision-making process, because I think we have a tendency to always say yes to things, especially as researchers. And there's always going to be people who's going to ask you to do things. And if you don't know the promotions criteria and you don't know what boxes you're ticking or not, you're going to say yes to everything and you're going to spread yourself thin. So what you want to know is, okay, which buckets am I filling? So maybe I don't need to do more research if I've already got a lot of publications. Maybe I'm not doing a lot of teaching. So maybe if a teaching opportunity comes, which is on the promotions criteria, I'm going to kind of be more inclined to say yes, and so on. So in order to navigate the decision-making process of which opportunities do I take, which opportunities I don't take, you need to know the promotions criteria. And then you also need to know what is it that I'm fulfilling and whatnot. And by the way, the promotions criteria is public information. So it's not this hidden document or something where you need to kind of ask around. So for example, my university, it's a very crystal clear document. It's out there, academic staff promotions criteria, and it tells you pretty much what you need to know to become lecturer, senior lecturer, reader, professor. They'll tell you what the requirements are if you go into the bottom. Now, that will differ from institution to institution. So for those watching, don't just go click University of Manchester promotions criteria. Look at the institution that you're in. But yeah, so see what the criteria is. have that document and then put kind of your own document and kind of see what am I fulfilling, which areas am I filling, which areas am I not fulfilling, and so on. So when the time comes, you would be ready prepared rather than not doing that and then finding out later on that you don't fulfill a lot of the criteria. So mistake number 5, and I know this might seem little, but I still think it's worthy of mentioning. Ooh, I enlarged it too much. Living in the negativity ecosystem. Now, unfortunately, academia, especially in the online space, it has this huge cloud of negativity. Okay. And I'm guilty of that sometimes. You'll see me ranting online about the system and so on. But I think too much of living in that space can kind of get to your head. So if you go online on any kind of academic forum or social media, the common consensus, particularly of people that didn't become academics or postdocs who can't get out of the postdoc, they will be like, the game is rigged. There's no point trying. Everything is, the system is against you. Everything is doom and gloom. Don't even try. And if somebody even tries to give a remote bit of hope, aka me, they will just kind of bash you, you know? They'll be like, oh, this guy is blah, blah, blah. Now, I will never forget that when I was finishing my PhD, the amount of negativity there was around doing a postdoc, and particularly I was an international student. So there was always this rhetoric of like, international students are just cheap labor. As soon as you're done your PhD, they're not even going to want you to do a job. And even if you do a postdoc, the chances of you to be an academic are slim. So there was kind of a lot of this rhetoric of why even bother, your PhD was a waste of time. Now, had I internalized that, I probably would have just packed my bags and gone home. But you know what? I told myself, I'm going to swing for the fences. I'm going to be realistic. I might not get anything out of it, but I'm going to give myself a pre-allocated time of a couple of years and see if this is going somewhere. I didn't kind of feed into that negative kind of rhetoric which was going on online, and it's probably increased by now, of everything is doom and gloom, don't even bother, academia is dead, leave it. Academia is broken, definitely. I've done a video about that. However, if your goal or your dream is to become an academic, the very least you can do is try to give it a go or increase your chances, or even put a set timeline. Like, listen, I'm going to be positive about this thing. I'm going to do everything in my power for an X amount of years. And if it doesn't work out, I'm okay with that. So let's try not to live too much in that negativity ecosystem. Now I'm going to move to the last one, which is a bit controversial. This is kind of my hot take, and it's a personal opinion. So you might agree or disagree with me, but this is, as I said, this is just my kind of way of doing things. So another one is hyper specialization. And I'm a big believer that specialization is overrated. And yes, I know some of you are going to get wound up by that. There's this legacy advice that gets given to everybody who's in academia, which is particularly like early career researchers or those who are still kind of finding their way, is find your niche. And this gets echoed like on and on and on. Find your research niche. You need to kind of find that area where you specialize in. Don't kind of dabble in too many different research areas because you'll look kind of scattered. And my hot take is that hyper specialization or finding your niche is overrated, honestly. Now, why do I think that? Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I always thought to myself, I want to make myself as employable or as one can be, if that's even a term, employable. I think it is. And the idea never made sense to me because I always said, if I specialize in a research area, yes, I will become kind of the person who's known for that area. But so let's say this is you. If you kind of want to be around here, you don't want to around this perp. My drawing is horrible, but let's say you want to be kind of like here. You want to be specialized. If you're specialized in one area, then you only qualify to the research grants in that one area. And if there's a job opportunities in the future, whatnot, you kind of limit yourself. You know what I mean? So in a way, I never kind of understood this concept. I always thought it makes more sense to dabble in different research areas and different things because you don't know where the chips might fall. In essence, I always thought of it as if I work on many different research projects, for example, something in public health, something more around clinical pharmacy, something around X, Y, and Z, the more I increase my chances of applying for different grants. You know what I mean? Because I'm now eligible for many different things. Same thing when the academic job comes, you don't know in which department it's going to be. You might not end up being an academic in the exact same department that you're in. You might be, for example, doing research in whatever, pharmacy, and then there might be a job post in medical education, which is more broad. So this whole idea of finding your niche, I think to some extent is it's self-defeating because it narrows your opportunity. So I don't know what that ridiculous drawing was, by the way. So let's just stick with the stick with the uh, stick with the normal linear thing that we do. So I always thought of it this way, the more you diversify in your research areas and in your skill set, the more you're opening up opportunities for yourself. Simple as that. And then even if you specialize in something, what if there's an academic in your institution that already does that much better than you? What if the field becomes irrelevant? For example, for those in the tech space, what if it's a hot area right now, the area that you specialized in, but then the funding runs dry because funding is changing. Whatever is a hot topic in research today might not be so trendy 5-10 years from now for funders. So I always made it my thing to kind of dabble in a lot of different things. And if you look at what the research that I worked on, for example, my PhD, it was more like community pharmacy and patients. My postdoc then became more around workforce education and training. And then I also did part-time postdocing in primary care, which is even general practice, to be more specific, which is outside of community pharmacy. And now working as an academic, I'm dabbling in a lot of different things. So I'm dabbling in AI, I'm dabbling in community pharmacy. Now I'm moving more towards clinical pharmacy and cardiometabolic conditions and so on. And the reason why I continue to do that, because it's kind of like you diversify, the more likely you protect yourself. For those of you who are interested in stocks or investment or whatever, you always want to diversify. It's kind of like a hedge. So I would say probably try not to get dragged into this whole, this is my research niche and I don't do anything outside of it. Broaden your horizons. I think that's the essence of what I'm trying to say. Now, to really make this hit home, I'll give you a real life example. So this is two people I know, and obviously I'm just going to call them person A and B. And this is based on the real world. So I didn't make this up. So person A literally was a brilliant researcher, one of the best researchers I've seen. And they've been postdocing easily for more than 5 years. This is me being conservative. I would easily say 8 years plus. And they had publication after publication in top journals, literally journals that I couldn't dream of getting published in at the moment. And they're known by a lot of people in their field, but they were stuck in postdoc purgatory, and they still are till this day. Okay. Now, the reason being is that they've just, all of kind of the things I said above, they've overcommitted to becoming the best postdoc ever, which is doing whatever their PI wants them to do. They've never made their ambitions known. They had a huge fear of their PI. Their PI did have a bit of a reputation of being somewhat toxic, so I don't blame them. But they kind of just stood there excelling in their postdoc job, and they're hoping that at some point somebody would notice. Okay. Then you have person B, 2.5 years into their postdoc, definitely had fewer publications than person A, but had those conversations early. I think you know where I'm going with this. This is basically me. Had the conversations with their PI, also about the head of the department, about where they wanted to go, dabbled in multiple research fields, led on grant applications, read the promotions criteria in year one, and quietly ticked every box. And guess who got the academic job and who did it? So in theory, person A is a better researcher than person B, no doubt about it. But being the best researcher is not a gateway to becoming an academic. And I think that's kind of the point that I was trying to make throughout this video. But anyways, that is pretty much the essence of why I wanted to get out there. And the reason why I do that, because there's a lot of negativity in the online space. There's a lot of lack of know-how, and a lot of people ask me this question. So I thought if I can kind of illustrate from my lived experience or at the very least, if there's a few nuggets of information you can take from this, this will increase your chances, because ultimately what we want to do is, never forget that, is we want to escape the postdoc purgatory. And to do that, we need to kind of bridge the gap between what the academic requirements are and what being a postdoc is. So we want this central area to expand. So we want this kind of thing to expand, You get what I'm trying to do. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe to my free weekly newsletter where I give insider tips around academic life and so on. And the reason why that would mean a lot is because there's a lot of AI slop out there. There's a lot of, like fake content creators and so on who don't really have a lot of lived experience, and they'll just put any kind of thing they ran through ChatGPT. However, what I'm trying to achieve through this channel is I want to talk to people and give them insights from somebody who's kind of, has the experience, who's been there and done that. But anyways, if you really got value out of this one, subscribe to my free weekly newsletter. Also check out my services page if you're interested in my workshops and so on. So this is the part where I do my selling. And anyways, until next time.